Hello and welcome all you wonderful people to the Texas Special YouTube channel. For this December 2024 HO scale locomotive product review, we are going to take a look at my Athearn Southern Pacific GP38. Now, this is an older blue box locomotive, an older Athearn blue box locomotive, and it has been upgraded with an MRC universal wireless sound decoder, which is why I have the remote sitting right there. So to start off with, the MRC universal sound decoder allows for, the wireless sound decoder allows for independent control of a locomotive on a DC model railroad, and it still allows you to control simple functions like headlights, sound, turning it on and off, sounding the bell, sounding the whistle, direction and speed control. There is no ability to control the engine revving independent from the speed. And it is a cool feature to have on the railroad, having a locomotive on the railroad with sound. My one complaint is that it's actually very quiet. You can barely, when it's running at track speed, you can just barely hear it. When it's crawling around the railroad at low speed doing switching maneuvers, things and such of that nature, you can hear it pretty good. But that's my only complaint with the sound. That, and sometimes the remote, I'm not sure if it's the remote or the decoder, but at times it's kind of finicky. It doesn't want to respond to the command inputs from the remote control. So I don't know if that's a button sticking or what the issue is there, but at times the engine will try to run away from you. This has been my experience, but overall I'm very satisfied with this, even with the intermittent runaway issues and the quietness of the decoder. Overall, a great product. So to start off with, on the locomotive, we'll take a look at we'll focus on the cab. You have this separately applied beacon light, which SP did have beacon lights on, rotary beacon lights on a lot of their locomotives in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. A separately applied sunshade here on the cab. The prototypically correct Nathan P3 air horn. These number boards did light up at one time. Full disclosure, when I had the decoder put in, the individual that helped me get this decoder in was unable to get the headlights functioning again, so this engine does not have functioning headlights. You can see the window cab glazing here, their cab window glazing. The numbering and the lettering on the locomotive, and I'm not sure if it's a result of the weathering job that was put on this engine or if it's just the age of the locomotive or what have you, but it's kind of faded, kind of translucent. I'm not sure how well you can see it on the video there, but it is, the 4 and the 8 are definitely more they're not as opaque and crisp as the 2 and the 3. The numbers on this number board here on the conductor side of the locomotive have kind of rubbed off, but the numbers on the engineer side are still clearly there. You have this ratchet style handbrake here, which is prototypically correct, and I can tell you from first-hand experience running remote control engines in the yard and just in general trying to be a nice conductor and help out my engineer on conventional jobs or road jobs with Jeeps in the consist. These ratchet style handbrakes here, they suck. I hate them. Got some nice cast-on detailing. The compartment latches here and here. Some little cast-on vent detailing here. The jack stand detail here. You will notice that this little swing arm here is kind of broken off, but otherwise the detailing on the trucks is good and present throughout. You have wire grab irons, which is consistent with the older style of Athearn locomotives. This is a second-hand acquisition. I bought this at the 2023 Greater Houston train show for $25. When I bought it, it was a DC locomotive. So, you have the sand filler hatch right here, and you have some nice cast-on grill detailing here and here. The bloody nose on the front of the locomotive is pretty well done. Along the top of the nose, the paint separation is not as well defined as along the sides of the nose, and along the top of the nose it is a little bit more, the gray bleeds through a little bit more than along the sides and along the front. Whoever owned this locomotive previous to me, not sure who you are, but I do thank you. You did at least install the snowplow detail here, and at one time this engine did have the MU hoses, but all the MU hoses on this side have broken off on the conductor side, and the MU hoses on the engineer side, the middle one is missing. The engine did come already equipped, when I purchased it, already came with KD number 5 magnetic operating knuckle couplers. You have this cast-on grill detailing here behind the cab for the turbo air intake. All of the grill detailing on this locomotive, given this is an older style locomotive, is cast on. There is no separately applied or see-through grill details on this engine. And moving along to the long hood of the engine, you can see loads of cast-on hood latches and hinge detailing. You have this cast-on hatch right here. As I said, cast-on grill on the dynamic brake blister. And of course this air intake grill right here, obviously cast on. And along the back of the locomotive, you can see right here, this the red kind of bleeds into the gray. The paint separation is not anywhere near well defined, and this is on both sides of the locomotive. It's not anywhere near as well defined on the rear of the locomotive as it is on the front of the locomotive. And again, along the edges here on both sides, it is kind of they bleed into one another. It's a sloppy paint separation, and it's not very opaque. But $25, I'm not too tore up about it. You've also got the fuel tank detailing. That's the sight glass and the fill nozzle here. You have the main reservoir for the locomotive, and you can see the truck detailing here is good, is in a little bit better condition than the lead trucks, and you can see that swing arm there that I was referencing earlier. This is the detail part that's broken on that lead truck, but overall still a great locomotive. The walkway along the short and long hoods, as well as the steps, are one solid casting, and they do not have the safety tread. Taking a look at the top side of the locomotive, you can see the P3 air horn. See that filler hatch, that sand nozzle I was talking about. You've got some nice rivet detailing here, some cast on lift rings here and here. This little cast on vent here. You've got the exhaust stacks, this cast on grill for the dynamic air brake, or excuse me, dynamic brake cooling fan. And you have these cooling fans here for the locomotive cooling system, also cast on, and lots of nice rivet detailing in the appropriate spots. One cool thing about these Athearn locomotives, this panel right here, it ends here and it begins here. Okay, this panel will actually pop off, and in a lot of cases that will aid in installation of a DCC decoder. So it's one reason that I really like Athearn engines, in addition to the fact that they work. They're like the Toyota Corollas of the model train world, whether they're old or they're new. And I'd argue happily all day long that the older stuff is a little bit better, a little bit more bulletproof, because there's less to go wrong. It's basic electromechanical engineering. You got a hard wire from the trucks to the motor to the lights. No PC circuit board to worry about. Looking at the front of the locomotive, you can see the window glazing in the cab. You can see the SP very prominently and proudly displayed on the nose of the locomotive. You have these cast on marker lights. Even when this engine did have operating headlights, the marker lights were cast on. They do not work. And you can see a little bit better that MU hose detailing I was talking about. You know, the hoses on the conductor side are missing. The hoses on the engineer side, you know, one is missing. And you can see the snowplow there is a little chewed up, which that's fine. That just adds to the authenticity of the locomotive, because I rarely see engines, whether they're 6-axle road engines or Jeeps or yard switchers, that have a perfectly clean and defined snowplow. Most of them have nicks and dents and dings from scraping crossings or previous derailments, or hitting stuff on the tracks. It is what it is, and I do like the fact that this shows some dents and dings, just like the real thing. And of course the wire hand railings, actual metal wire hand railings. You can see the number boards and the headlight in the appropriate arrangement, as well as the cast on door on the front of the conductor side of the locomotive. Looking at the rear of the locomotive, again you can see the headlight in the proper arrangement, number boards. You've got the SP4823 matching the number on the number boards on the front and rear of the locomotive, as well as printed alongside the cab. You have these little classification light punch out areas in the body. You have these cast on classification lights here. One thing I have noticed that does kind of irritate me just a little bit, not so much that I don't like the engine, there are no grab irons, cast on or separately applied, on the rear of the locomotive right here where they should be, but that's okay, still a great engine. You have these cast on hatches here on the bottom of the long hood, right at the walkway, as they should be in real life. You stick an EOT in there, accurate gauge, just some spare parts or whatever, some extra air hoses. You have the pilot here, no snowplow, which again prototypically correct arrangement. You have the spots for the MU hoses as well as the big air hoses, but they're not applied. And you have the KD knuckle coupler. And one thing I will note is whoever owned this locomotive previously for whatever reason, decided to glue the coupler box to the drawbar, which it kind of gives it a tacky look, but you know, whatever, it works. I can't be that tore up about it, I guess. Okay, now we get to the fun part of this product review, where I get to kind of show off a little bit of the sound features this engine has. So if I press the number 1 on this remote, you see that little bell icon. And there was that runaway I was talking about. You have this number 2, this little flashlight looking emblem, that is the horn. And here we go, talking of that issue I was talking about. Sometimes a little love tap wakes it up. Number 6 silences the sound. 3 is the head that controls the front headlight, and 4 controls the rear headlight. 5 is the stop button. This is deceleration, this is acceleration. And 9 controls the direction. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward push button operation, aside from the slight runaway issue, which I'm not sure what that is, but you know, Locomotive operates and runs great otherwise, and I absolutely love this thing. This engine, by the time that this video is published, will have been featured on the Stars Hollow Railroad numerous times, doing everything from pulling the MBT-SH and the MSHBT, to handling the rock train, to handling local switching duties. This is an engine that I use for a little bit of everything on the railroad, and why wouldn't I? It is so much fun to run. So I'm going to show this engine working a extra job pulling some loaded rock cars out of glacier gravel on a weekend, basically.